Aino has faced much criticism from the community during and after the weeks leading to Nod-Krai's release. Quite a few players criticized her for having a lackluster kit. Personally, I disagree due to the amount of potential value she can give Nod-Krai comps on top of being significantly better than the Natlan equivalent of her. Sorry, Katrina.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get in.
If you'd like to see some people defending Aino, both Soluna and Mies have made videos doing so, and I encourage you to watch them after this video. My intention in this video is not to focus on her supportive capabilities or her kit overall, but to make her into a DPS. If you've read her kit, you know that this is not the intended playstyle for this character, but since when have I ever played in the intended manner? Before I talk about how I wanted to use her, let me first go over her kit. Aino is the first Hydro Claymore. The community has been waiting a long time for this one, as it was the only weapon element pairing that had yet to spawn a character prior to her release. Her normal attack string is fairly standard with a 3-part combo string. It's kind of funny that this attack string effectively has an animation cancel built in, making it one of the easiest ways most players can perform one. Her skill allows her to quickly move distances via a grapple-esque mechanic, dealing hydro damage at the end of her travel distance. Not only is she the first Hydro Claymore, she's also the first Hydro Katrin clone. As for her ult, she basically spawned a sprinkler in the middle of the field, dealing hydro damage over its duration. This ult becomes significantly better when you have another Nod-Krai unit in the party, as they will fire more frequently, hit in a larger AoE, and have better ICD timings. To summarize, she is designed as an off-field hydro applicator and not much else, since her damage is abysmal relative to other recently released characters. So, how did I envision playing this character as a DPS? Well, by performing Dragonstrike with her. Just to refresh your memory, or if you've never heard of Dragonstrike before, Dragonstrike refers to the technique that takes advantage of hit lag to perform a plunging attack from flat ground. In order to pull it off, you need to first hit an enemy, which is a poor tree in this case, with an attack that produces hit lag. Next, you'll need to dash jump during this hit lag window, and with proper timing, you should then be able to plunge due to the extra height gained by dash jumping in the hit lag window. While I'm able to Dragonstrike with Aino without needing movement speed, I'm unable to do it consistently, which puts a constraint on my team building, requiring a unit that can give movement speed to other characters. Funny enough, with movement speed, characters like Aino with child models are able to roll on flat ground, something you'd only normally be able to do after falling from a small height. Unfortunately, this doesn't count as a dodge roll. This is Genshin Impact, not Dark Souls, so this is just something funny to do. I did figure out the movement speed breakpoints. You need to be able to do this on any model with the numbers on screen. Obviously, these numbers may be different for certain characters like Veressa, for example, due to their deviation from the normal model structures, but these will be generally true. Going back to Aino, there are two things to do: practice Dragon Striking with her, and formulate a team around this playstyle that can beat the Abyss. Let's first talk about the team structure. As of the 6.0 or Luna 1 update, there are only 3 characters that can give you an elemental infusion to other characters: Candace, C6 Bennett, and Chongyun. At first glance, you would think that either Candace or Bennett would be the ideal choice here to infuse Aino's plunges. In the case of Candace, it would mean that Aino could build into hydro damage fully, benefiting all of her kit instead of just her normal and plunge attacks. There are some ways to make this deal significant damage, but this won't work in the current Abyss, with enemies immune to hydro on one half, and the other side requiring electrocharge in the case of low damage teams, and needing a support that provides movement speed. There's just too much that needs to be fit in order to make something like this work, and Candace just doesn't provide enough buffs to make a team with her and Aino do enough damage. Unless, of course, you are wheelchairing with the other 2 teammates, in which case, I don't know if it's that interesting of a clear at that point. So then, does Bennett make sense? After all, enemies with a permanent Hydro Aura make it free to vaporize pyro-infused attacks. I did try to draft a few comps, including one that utilizes Sunfire. This team was basically the best thing I could think of to use with Bennett, but even this doesn't make much sense to use for this particular Abyss, because even though I would be able to consistently vape with plunge attacks in the first chamber's second half, it turns out Farina isn't capable of maintaining the Hydro Aura with both Sunfire and plunges / normal attacks from Aino. I'm not even going to attempt to talk about Chongyun. That would end up with a team arguably worse than the synergy with Candace. So the only option I was left with was physical damage. Some enemies in the first half already have Lord Physical Resistance, which makes Super Conduct overall less valuable. I still wanted the ability to trigger a superconduct though, and originally decided on this team of Aino, Furina, Kuki, and Diona. I didn't end up going with this team for two reasons. The first is that Kuki and Diona's healing isn't enough to stack Furina quickly, and the second is that Diona's shield breaks too easily in my experience in long, overdrawn fights, which you can imagine happens a lot when you're trying to make a significant part of your DPS a character that doesn't have multipliers. And also, if the shield from Diona breaks, then there goes the movement speed buffs and my ability to reliably Dragonstrike. So I had to go back to the drawing board. In the end, I decided to substitute Jean for Diona. At this point, it's pretty clear that Aino wouldn't be doing anywhere close to the majority of the team's damage. Are you honestly surprised though? I mean, like, this character was literally designed to have two Nod-Krai party members in the team, and as a off-field Hydro applicator, not even as a sub DPS. This is not a Nefa we're talking about. That said, I'm going to try my best to make it as good as possible, and with the current team setup, I don't really have an excuse to not clear the Abyss anymore. I'll talk more about this team synergy when I establish their builds later in the video. For now, I had a more pressing matter to attend to: practicing Dragonstrike with Aino. I practiced for hours, incrementally getting better as the days passed by in-game. Recording my practice sessions, I looked at my results frame by frame to get a better idea of timing for her. I'm not in animation properly, yeah. Eventually, I graduated past smacking at a tree, opting to fight the enemies I'd be facing in the Abyss. I failed again and again. It's always a gradual process with these things, but that struggle makes the end result all the more sweeter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's go, dude! Oh my god! Yes! Oh my god! Shoot, I missed the first one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go. Okay. You know what? We take those. Let's go. This is insane. I'm so ecstatic right now. I was actually doing it. I was able to get multiple Dragon Strikes in a row consistently and in a proper rotation. It's finally time for me to give a proper attempt at this current Abyss. Before going in, I had to tune my team up to be able to properly handle the onslaught it would soon face. I equipped Aino with 2-piece attack, 2-piece physical damage bonus, and Wolf's Gravestone. There were other options I had considered, like 4-piece Marashase Hunter and 4-piece Shimenawas, but I scrapped both because they didn't have the substats necessary to be better than my 2-piece build. And I still felt like I needed some additional Hydra application to maintain Electro Charge to address several mechanics in this Abyss, for which I felt that Furina was insufficient. Speaking of Furina, I built her with damage in mind, equipped with 4-piece Golden Troop and Festering Desire. I also nerfed her HP a bit, with the intention being to stack Fanfare faster and to counter a specific boss's mechanics. Kuki was on a 2-piece EM, 2-piece EM build, with Fab Sword equipped. It seems weird on paper, but these were the main pieces available to me that gave Kuki a decent amount of EM while providing enough crit rate to proc Fab Sword's passive. For Jean, I gave her a build that focused on healing, with a 4-piece VV set with a healing bonus circlet and Skyward Blade. There's quite a bit of synergy in this team when it comes to fanfare generation. With the way Kuki's skill works, 30 fanfare points are generated instantly. Swapping to Jean, who basically full heals everyone in the party, I gain an additional 30 points from healing Kuki to full. This 60-point generation is only considering the self-HP drain Kuki does to herself. It doesn't even consider the continuous drain Furina's skill puts on the team. This is one of the fastest fanfare generation methods I've ever made in the team. On the other hand, Aino's inclusion in this composition makes the least amount of sense, as someone like Fremine would make more sense than this. I mean, to be fair, you can say Aino is battering Furina. That's my cope anyway. This team setup was the best thing I could think of to make Aino work in this Abyss, and fitting a cryo character to get superconduct didn't really go well, as I mentioned before. Alright, with that in mind, time to form a rotation plan. First, Aino hold skill into a plunge. Swap to Jean and use her skill, and then go to Furina with her skill into ult. Kuki then takes the field using her skill and ult if available. Finally, going back to Jean, who uses her skill again, and then ult. Going back to Aino, ideally I want to do 4 Dragon Strikes into a hold E plunge to round off the rotation. As you might be able to tell, I did practice somewhat with the hold skill plunge tech that all Keqing variants are able to do. Free plunge is always nice since that's the focus of my Aino's playstyle. With that said, it's finally time to talk about my Abyss runs. I decided to commentate over my Abyss runs this time, doing a sort of analysis style and explaining my decision process and play as the run is happening. This is the first time I'm doing something like this for my videos, so please do let me know where I can improve, and or if you'd rather have some kind of other commentary over the Abyss runs. Alright, so for Chamber 1, I'm starting off with my standard rotation. After Aino plunges here, I do miss a fall damage opportunity with Jean, as I'm a bit too slow to make it so that the Mirror Maiden slams onto the ground. There's also some bugs with fall damage when it comes to this enemy, which is why I didn't just launch the Mirror Maiden straight up. In case you're wondering, and this has been a bug since Inazuma for whatever godforsaken reason. With the team in action, you can really see how quickly Fanfare stacks. I'm close to max stacks by the time Aino is back on field. I'm overall a bit slow to defeat the Mirror Maiden. I have some runs where I was able to take her out much faster, but so far the timing is within tolerable range. There's some opportunity to deal some initial damage to the cactus along with some electro charge triggers, as you'll soon see once the boss comes out. I'm saying this now because there's some other stuff I need to say quickly. I pretty much always position myself in the center of the hats to be prepared for whenever the real hat is, which you can track via the Golden Trail. Here, I save Kuki ult for the second gauge refill due to filling the gauge partially earlier. Once the boss's shield bar is about halfway down, I then trigger Furina's ult and subsequently Jean's ult to prep for the cactus's down phase and make sure my damage window lines up with that phase. I also want to swap to Aino just before the boss's shield dissipates, as a shield bar counts as a health bar that can trigger Wolf's Gravestone's passive, as you can see from the red wolf symbol appearing. Overall, pretty clean Dragon Striking. Realistically, even though my rotation plan only calls for 4 Dragon Strikes, I could get more, but it's hard with different timings for different enemy hitboxes. One cool thing you can see here is that during the plunge animation, Aino isn't getting staggered by the cactus's attacks, which is due to plunging attacks being a hyper armor motion, preventing poise damage. And honestly, that's pretty much the major details for this run overall. I did have something that was 20 seconds faster than this, but it wasn't as clean with Dragon Striking, and I had a different Abyss card buff that day. So that's why this is slower. But overall, you know, pretty good. I do flub up a little bit at the end here with Dragon Striking. It's hard to maintain. Now, you might be saying there's no way I cleared with 50 seconds left on the clock, but you'd be mistaken. With Permanent Hydro Aura on top of the fact that I still get 40% Red Shred to Electro and Pyro, this chamber half gets completely torn to shreds by Chevreuse Overload. Some quick tips: the Tulpa always indicates which way it teleports to by its diving direction. Additionally, the Tulpa teleport can be stalled by eliminating the mini Tulpas during its attack patterns, though this isn't necessarily 100% reliable from what I know, at least. Ha ha ha. Anyway, you can see, overall, pretty quick. I definitely did not need to Shenling ult here at the very end, but it is what it is. Alright, so Chamber 2 is a bit painful for Dragonstrike. Hitting multiple enemies while ensuring you don't ungroup them is particularly difficult for this playstyle. One key thing is to use his Jean skill to push one Hilichurl into the other to get them initially grouped. Then I use Aino's skill to go high up in the air to bait the Hilichurl's ranged attack. Their ranged attack gives them hyper armor, preventing them from being staggered. Normally Aino's punch attacks would stagger them, but they won't while in this attack animation, which is pretty cool, as you can see. If I had slightly better cards, I would have already killed these Hilichurls. Next, we have the Dragonfly. The Dragonfly that follows has a debuff that lowers all your party members' crit, healing amount, and damage bonuses. However, I've tuned my Jean to be able to heal my entire party to full as this debuff applies, which cleanses it and gives me a damage buff in return, which is pretty nice. Obviously, I made a mistake earlier. I shouldn't have activated Jean's ult so early, there was no need to, but it is what it is. Additionally, this boss's hitbox, as you can tell, is pretty annoying to hit Dragon Strikes with. It is what it is. And pretty much I just keep my rotation up to slowly kill this boss. There is a way to completely dodge the debuff, as the radius of the effect doesn't cover the entire Abyss Arena, but in my case it doesn't make sense to dodge it due to the amount of healing I have. And when it does eventually tire itself out, Aino can now Dragon Strike on it, as you can see here. It's pretty good. Even though I have sort of this standard rotation plan in mind, as you can see, I'm not following it strictly. This is just because, you know, different boss mechanics will require different timings for certain things. Happened with the cactus earlier, it's happening with the moonfly now. And yeah, that's the first half. As for the second half, it is an exercise in grouping and rotation consistency. I use a similar strategy where I go to the side to better group the enemies. With the amount of overload triggering, the Rift Hounds can stay in place, allowing me to deplete their health bars. You may have noticed it already, but I should have cleared them in one rotation, but because I forgot to drop Globot, which is a complete blunder on my part, I didn't, and have to extend my rotation, or not extend my rotation, but use part of the next rotation to defeat them. Grouping the mechs is fairly similar to grouping the Rift Hounds, but as you can see, Overload just staggers them like crazy to almost seemingly random directions. And yeah, but eventually I do take them out. As for the Eremites, main thing I do here is stall Raiden's ult. This is so that the health bars of the summons are now active, and then they get hit by Raiden's slash, which then means they ultimately die very quickly, and then I can take out the Eremites swiftly following after. Alright, for the third chamber, the Electro Fatui is fairly trivial to deal with. One rotation is enough to defeat her, and with the amount of poison damage my team has, I can prevent the Electro Fatui from launching backwards, which is the only real useful trick I applied here. And, well, Dragonstrike time. As for the duck boss that follows this enemy, tested Cookie's electro application in the overworld, and it is sufficient enough to take the ducklets that spawn out. You can actually stop the boss's charge attack by getting hit by it, and this works even if you're in animation with iframes. On top of this, I purposely get hit by this boss on multiple occasions, both to increase fanfare generation and to get more electro application via Jean's ult. As you saw, I do delay Farina and Jean's ult so that the damage bonus gained would line up with the window where the duck boss becomes, well, a sitting duck. Due to the movement of this boss, I do have to forego Dragon Striking in certain instances, as hitting a boss that rockets itself up in the air with a normal attack isn't very feasible. I did plan for 2 shield phases, as each ducklet that hits a boss takes out 5% of its HP, which totals almost half of its total health bar. And that's kind of damage I desperately need, since carrying Aino over the finish line is no easy task. The main trick to this rotation is just making sure that Aino is not on field when the boss is in the air, otherwise then she can't deal damage. Here I do get staggered quite a bit more than I would have liked, but this did end up giving more electro application via the interaction I mentioned earlier with Jean's ult and purposely getting hit. And so now, just finishing off with a couple more Dragon Strikes, and we are set to go to the second half. The second half is pretty annoying to deal with. Overload is the bane of grouping existence for this first wave. The Chasm Knights just don't like to be grouped with Overload. I had to hold back on how many attacks I launched with Raiden so that they didn't ungroup while dealing damage, which makes it so that I have to use almost 2 rotations to clear them out. I was so concerned by ungrouping them via Overload that I didn't recast Raiden's skill after her ult expired here, which was a mistake in hindsight. As for the Kenkis, I couldn't find a way to consistently group them without the Cryo Kenki dashing out. There were some inconsistent methods, but I just decided to let him dash. I should have ran to the opposite side here to have him run back faster, which did cost me some time in the end. The main thing is to keep the Mask and Animo Kenkis on the same axis, only going in between them when the Animo Kenki tries to do its melee attack, as you see here. Keeping them grouped at this point isn't too bad, since they'll actively block each other's movements. And the only goal now is just to do as much damage as possible while making sure that they don't ungroup themselves, which I'd say I'm doing okay on. It's not the cleanest run I've ever done, but I got the job done on the dot. And here are the builds I used. Hope you gleaned something from my commentary and enjoyed the gameplay. If it wasn't clear already, Aino is definitely not the main source of damage here. I like to think her contribution was somewhat significant, but let's be real here, she was kind of being wheelchaired. Though it was cool to see 50k damage per plunge, I still have a ways to go before I truly master Dragon Striking. But hey, at least I can say I can do it 6 times in a row. Now, before you go, there's just one more funny thing to show you.
Is it possible to learn this power?